Okay, my name is Jamie Brisick. I'm a writer based in Los Angeles. And 5 years ago, I traveled to Australia to write a profile of Westerly Windina. Westerly Windina was formerly Peter Drouyn, a famous Australian surfer in the 60s and 70s. And when I went there in 2009, he'd recently transitioned to become Westerly. He became a she. And we sat and had lunch together. I was writing a profile of her, so I asked a lot of questions about her life. And she talked a lot about her life. And she talked about Peter. And when she spoke of Peter, she spoke of Peter in the past tense. And at one point I said, "What happened to Peter?" And she said, "Well, Peter is up there with Mom and Dad," to suggest that Peter had died. And Peter was no longer, and Westerly was this new person. And she was one of the more fascinating people I've ever met in my entire life. And I first wrote a profile of her, and that led to doing a documentary project about her, and then also writing this book about her. The book covers the time I met Westerly, but the actual narrative starts with us in Bangkok, where she's getting her gender reassignment surgery. But then it flashes back to Peter's life, and it tells the whole story of Peter coming to surfing at age 11, being a great surfer, winning all kinds of national titles, international titles, traveling around the world, living what was very similar to the pro surfers today, except back then it was not so professionalized, there was not so much money, but Peter went all around the world and was a fantastic surfer. He was also an inventor. He invented the man-on-man surfing contest format. He invented a wave stadium. He had all kinds of big ideas. And the book follows Peter's life right up to Westerly in the present. In 1965, at age 15, Peter won the Australian national titles as a junior. This is back when surfboards were long, it was a longboarder. And then he continued to win title after title, but what was really interesting about Peter Drouyn is he transitioned. In the late 60s, there was something called the shortboard revolution, where the big longboards went short. And Peter made this transition beautifully and continued to surf great. So in 1970, in Hawaii, Peter was voted the best surfer in the world. And then had a movie made all about him in 1974 called Drouyn and Friends. In 1977, went on the world tour and was in a running to win the world title when the event, the final leg of the tour went to Hawaii, but was unable to compete in some of the contests, had some bad luck with some stuff, and finished, I believe, 4th in the world. And many of the people we've interviewed, many of them world champions, Sean Thompson, Robert Bartholomew, Nat Young, etc., they will all say that Peter deserved more than he got. He should have been more recognized as a famous surfer. The book is good for someone who is interested in surfing and transgender people. And it's an interesting mix between these two things because Peter was a very macho man. And as many of his peers said, he was the last person that they thought would become a woman later on. I've been writing about surfing for about 20 years. I was a professional surfer myself in the late 80s. I've lived my entire life surfing. And when I first entered the surf world in the late 70s, it was very open-minded. There were a lot of eccentric characters, a lot of very interesting people. But over time it became more conservative, and I feel very, very conservative now. And being a journalist, writing a lot about surfers, I was very happy to write the story of someone who is very much taboo in the surf culture, someone that most surfers would be afraid of or feel uncomfortable around. And it's unfortunate, I think, that surfing is so narrow-minded because I grew up in Los Angeles around a wide variety of people, and I've always had no problem with eccentric people or gay people or transgender people. I mean, I was very happy to present a very human story and hopefully have people understand who Westerly is on a deeper level. Because when I first met her, many of the magazines and newspapers that had featured stories of her just made fun of her. You know, they made her some ridiculous joke. But it's a human interest story, and it's about a fascinating character. I learned so much about myself in writing this book. There's a lot of understanding of just how we work and how contradictory we are and how complicated we are.